You don't have a money problem. You have an emotional contract with emptiness, a silent agreement that pain must continue so the pursuit still makes sense. Because if the suffering ends, what's left of you? That's what took me 15 years to understand. 15 years chasing every cent as if my soul was collateral. Courses, debt, strategies, goals, all of it disguised as ambition. But the truth? Money was never the problem. The real collapse was needing money just to feel real. They taught you that lack of money is the root of all suffering. But what if the opposite is true? What if your obsession with money is what stops you from facing what's really destroying you? The emotional addiction to scarcity, the dependency on symbolic failure, the inherited shame dressed as financial responsibility. There's a part of you that needs to stay broke, because success would expose something worse, the absence of identity without struggle. Who are you when there's nothing left to fight? You didn't notice it, but you've become addicted to feeling inadequate. That's the most profitable drug of this century. And it doesn't come in pills or needles. It comes in goals, spreadsheets, online courses, comparison loops, investment apps. It comes in the silence between one purchase and the next. The world didn't make you addicted to money. It made you addicted to the feeling of not being enough. Because as long as you feel incomplete, you keep consuming. And as long as you consume, you stay useful to the system. You were never poor. You were emotionally programmable. And now, amidst the silent collapse of your modern life, high anxiety, zero purpose, shallow connections, symbolic debts piling up, you start to notice something terrifying. No amount of money is fixing it. Because the hole was never in your bank account. It was in your reflection. And every time the balance grows but the emptiness remains, something inside you screams, maybe it's not about the money. Maybe it never was. Maybe you built your entire life on a highly profitable emotional lie. That fixing the outside would calm the chaos within. It took me 15 years to accept that truth. Because it destroys and liberates you at once. It shatters the financial hero you tried to become, and frees the forgotten child who just wanted to exist without proving their worth in the emotional marketplace of pain. Money isn't the enemy, but it was never the savior either. It's just the distorted mirror of everything you were too afraid to feel. You chase money like someone running from their own shadow. You work, invest, study, plan, and the more you chase, the more something slips away. It doesn't matter how much you earn. The feeling of not being enough stays untouched, like a hidden crack beneath your ribs. Because what's broken isn't your cash flow. It's the emotional contract with pain. A silent pact formed in childhood, when you first understood, without words, that love had to be earned. That care came with effort. That affection was a reward for performance that you'd only be seen if you delivered something in return. We called it responsibility. But deep down, it was just an ancient emotional code. I only exist if I'm useful. You don't want money. You want permission to rest. You want to stop feeling guilty for sitting on the couch without being productive. You want to look around without envying those who earned more, grew faster, traveled farther. You want to feel at peace without having to justify it. But as long as money is your only symbol of value, that peace will always be out of reach. Because every achievement turns into obligation. Every rest feels like a threat. You're not fighting for freedom. You're fighting for a few minutes where you don't hate yourself. And the system knows that. It feeds your pursuit, sabotages your stillness, profits off your pain. The money you want isn't material. It's emotional. It's the unconscious representation of a permission no one ever gave you. So you keep accumulating, saving, controlling. Every cent becomes a desperate attempt to secure not just financial safety, but emotional safety, as if money could promise no more abandonment, no more humiliation, no more disconnection. But here's the brutal truth. Money can't give you what you really want, because what you want is symbolic, ancestral, invisible, and what's invisible remains insatiable. The more you try to solve with money what was born from emotional lack, the poorer you become, not in numbers but in soul, and the easier you are to manipulate, to consume, to break. In the end, the trap isn't in lack or excess. It's in the illusion that fixing your financial life will fix your inner world. It's in the childish hope that external control will bring internal peace. It's in the hidden belief that if you gather enough, you'll finally deserve to exist. But no amount of wealth can erase the trauma of growing up feeling unworthy. And until you face that, you'll remain trapped. Trapped in the cycle. Trapped in the symbol. Trapped in yourself. You no longer know how to want something without guilt. You can't dream without turning the dream into a metric. Every plan you make is already poisoned by the need to perform. You don't desire for the pleasure of desire. You desire to prove that you deserve, to justify your existence, to keep alive the illusion that you're on the right track. And that's why everything you touch turns to burden. Everything that starts light ends up heavy. You've forgotten how to relax without self-punishment. And when you try, something inside whispers that you're wasting time, losing money, missing your chance to finally become someone. That whisper is your true captor, not the system. The system just profits from it. Deep down, money became an emotional crutch, a modern talisman to support the pain of not knowing who you are without it. Because every time your balance grows, you feel slightly more visible. And every time it shrinks, your sense of self-worth evaporates. Your bank account became your identity's thermometer. If it's high, you're a winner. If it's low, you're a disappointment. It doesn't matter how much you've evolved emotionally, spiritually, creatively. If the money doesn't confirm it, you doubt yourself. That's what nobody told you. The most unstable currency in the world isn't the dollar or the euro. It's your self-worth. And it's been pegged to your financial status. You're not chasing freedom anymore. You're chasing anesthesia. You want a state where you no longer have to feel shame, fear, anger, rejection. And you think money will take you there. But money doesn't heal repressed emotions. It only postpones the reckoning. It builds bubbles of comfort where the trauma doesn't scream as loud. But those bubbles always burst. And everything you tried to avoid with consumption comes back stronger. Because it wasn't seen, named, or felt. You don't want wealth. You want relief. And the tragedy is that you confuse the two. The final trap is subtle, almost poetic. You spent your whole life chasing more money just to avoid yourself. But now, even with more, the emptiness remains. And the more you have, the more lost you feel. Because money was never the issue. What was missing in you can't be bought, saved, or invested. What was missing was the courage to feel what was hiding behind the hustle, the goals, the grind. And now, maybe for the first time, you begin to understand. True freedom was never about how much you make, but about how much you're willing to feel. Money gave you the illusion of control, and you clung to that like salvation. Finally, something that obeyed logic, that grew with effort, that rewarded with numbers, unlike people, unlike emotions, unlike that unstable childhood that taught you to mistrust affection. Money seemed fair, predictable, safe. But that safety is glass thin. Because beneath the balanced account, the desperation for emotional control still screams. And when life breaks the script, as it always does, you feel helpless, exposed, undone. So you blame money again, or the lack of it. And the cycle restarts. More goals, more sacrifice, more false certainty. The illusion that external control can fix internal collapse. But that collapse never fit in a spreadsheet. You believe your relationship with money is rational, but it's deeply symbolic. And like all unconscious symbols, it shapes your choices without asking permission. The refusal to spend on yourself, the fear of receiving too much, the discomfort with abundance, the attraction to unnecessary risk, the procrastination dressed as perfectionism. None of that is about money. It's about identity, about what you believe you deserve, about how you've learned to punish yourself. Money doesn't lie. It just exposes the trauma you tried to bury under productivity. That's why no budget plan will ever fix your life, not until you reorganize your inner world. And here's the most brutal part. The system knows. It was built to turn your wounds into markets, to sell you self-worth, purpose, freedom, healing, packaged as coaching, apps, retreats, premium experiences. It doesn't want you truly free. It wants you almost free. Free enough to keep believing, trapped enough to keep spending. The marketing of the 21st century doesn't sell products. It sells symbolic anesthesia for emotional wounds you're too scared to face. As long as you try to heal abandonment with cash flow, you'll remain an emotional avatar for someone else's profit. The real prison was never scarcity. It was the secret meaning you gave to money. You don't want $1 million. You want to feel like you matter. You don't want financial freedom. You want the sacred permission to be loved without having to earn it. But until you admit that, all your effort will keep feeding a system that turns emotional pain into performance metrics. And every dollar you gain will just be a reminder. You're still trying to buy what can only be accessed through emotional truth, belonging, acceptance, peace. You don't remember when you started selling your soul in symbolic installments. Maybe it began the moment you realized your feelings were inconvenient, that your sensitivity was a flaw, that it was better to be productive than to be present. That's when money started taking a sacred place in your mind, not as a tool, but as a disguise for the pain of never being enough, a disguise for the rage of being ignored, a disguise for the guilt of existing without immediate return. And silently, you convinced yourself that you'd be loved in proportion to your profitability. Money became a profane sacrament, a concrete baptism where salvation meant becoming endlessly useful, relentlessly valuable, always available for transaction. That's why you sabotage yourself when peace gets close. Because you've learned that pain is safer than calm. Pain is familiar. Pain protects you. You know who you are when you're struggling. But when things begin to work, when there's space, breath, silence, something inside you panics, and you run back to the chaos. You overspend. You overcommit. You delay. You create debt where there could be ease. Because ease threatens your identity. Scarcity doesn't. Scarcity is home. Scarcity makes you feel real. Prosperity, on the other hand, forces you to ask the one question you're not ready to face. Who am I without the suffering? The truth is you never wanted to be rich. You just wanted proof that you're not disposable, that you're not invisible, that you're not too broken to be loved. But that proof will never come through money. Because money speaks the language of markets, and markets don't have hearts. You're waiting for a cold, soulless system to validate your emotional existence. And as long as that's your plan, you'll keep breaking after every win. You'll keep feeling alone in your victories. You'll keep being hollow in your abundance. Because the recognition you crave will never be deposited. It doesn't come from outside. It comes from the collapse of finally accepting that money doesn't heal. It only distracts. And this is where everything starts to unravel. Your bankruptcy was never financial. It was symbolic, and it continues for as long as you treat money as destiny instead of mirror, for as long as you believe the answer lies in more instead of less. Less escape, less performance, less emotional fraud. When money stops being your medication, it can finally become your tool, but that demands grief, a funeral for the persona you invented to deserve love. And that's a price most are never willing to pay. What keeps you trapped isn't your salary. It's the identity you built around the pain of not feeling worthy. Because deep down, you've had moments when money was stable, when bills were paid, when goals were met. And still, the unrest lingered. The emptiness kept humming. The fear kept breathing behind every win. That's what quietly destroyed you. It forced you to see that the problem ran deeper than you thought. That your scarcity was internal. That your prison was symbolic. That money, in truth, was just a ritual, a mechanism to avoid touching the core wound, the wound of unworthiness, of early abandonment, of emotional starvation disguised as financial ambition. You don't want a new budget system. You want freedom from performing for affection, from monetizing your presence, from proving, constantly, that you deserve to be here. You want to look at a bank statement without feeling like your soul is printed on it. You want to rest without guilt, to breathe without bargaining. But you can't buy that. You can't split it into payments. You can't invest in it expecting ROI. You can only face it. And maybe that's why it's so rare. Because facing your own lie requires mourning. The mourning of everything you built on a functional illusion. The illusion that if you gathered enough, you'd finally feel whole. You spent years trying to fix what was never broken. You called it ambition, growth, evolution. But deep down, it was survival, hiding behind movement. And then it hits you. The chase was scripted. The money was symbolic. The pain was inherited. What's left when the performance ends? Only the silence. And from that silence, a voice you forgot you had. Listen. It's not asking for more. It's asking to be rewritten. Enter the map of occult reprogramming. And remember who you were before the system named you. The answer was never in the numbers. It was always in the symbol. What does money represent to you? Safety? Power? Recognition? Control? Love? Each of those meanings is a forgotten child within you begging to be seen. And as long as you respond with hustle, with effort, with accumulation, they'll keep screaming. The system taught you to listen to the bank, the market, the algorithm, but it never taught you to listen to the child. Because if you listen, you stop consuming, you stop performing, you start existing, and once you start existing, you no longer obey. That's why it took me 15 years to realize money was never my problem. My problem was the invisible emotional story I told about it. The fable that my peace depended on a number. The lie that my existence needed a receipt. Today I know, when money becomes your symbol of worthiness, you're already lost. But when you already feel whole, money becomes what it was always meant to be. A tool, nothing more. And that is terrifying. Because it gives you back the radical responsibility for your own freedom. The freedom to exist without having to pay for it.